Lances and Wings Episode 26. The journey to Ostrava. The four left the palace and started the trip to Ukrass. Oksana was very happy to be going home. She had hoped that she would meet a wealthy man who would take care of her. She had even thought of being the king's mistress, but she soon realized he only had eyes for Selena. She didn't care about love, she just didn't want to have to work, and to be given lavish gifts. Now she was traveling back home with the unmarried nephew of the queen. If she could win his heart, or even get him to take her virginity, she would be set for life. With her other two traveling companions being newlyweds, she would have time alone with Danylo when they slipped away to be alone. The first night of the journey they camped. This was not to Oksana's liking. She hoped to never camp again after this trip. At least on the way to Polithia, they had a wagon, which had a proper bed. She was not going to complain, but was extremely unhappy when they stopped for the night, though Danylo made her a makeshift bed. This made her smile and gave her an excuse to get close to him. She smiled at him and said, "Thank you," then kissed his cheek. Danylo blushed slightly. Oksana, realizing that Danylo was not used to a woman showing him affection, smiled. She thought in her mind, "By the time we get to Berdichev, you will love me." Early the next morning, Danylo got up and got a cup of coffee. Bartek and Olga were already up and had made coffee and tea for Olga. Olga teased her brother, "It seems somebody is smitten by you." He replied, "While the long blonde hair and the delicate build are enticing, I think she only sees gold coins when she looks at me." Bartek looked at him and smiled, saying, "What do you see when you look at her?" He blushed. Olga told him, "Don't count her just after gold until you know for sure, go with it. Have a few dances, maybe a kiss or two. Just remember, like you told me, you cannot be in sin. You have to wait until marriage." Danylo blushed again, remembering the incident. He finally replied, "You just want me to have a dance partner so we can be a foursome at parties." Bartek laughed, saying, "Darling, he is on to us. We want him to have fun for our own selfish reasons." The three laughed. Oksana had been awake listening. She was faking being asleep. She thought about what was being said. She knew she had to be careful not to seem to be only after gold. She decided to try to be more of an outdoor girl, since Danylo was adventurous. She got up and had some tea and breakfast. When Bartek and Olga started to spar, she went up to Danylo and asked him, "Will you teach me to use a sword?" Danylo, surprised, took a sword out and handed it to her. He instructed her on the basics. To his surprise, she listened and did as instructed. Her movements became a little more fluid. Oksana had asked just to be near Danylo. To her surprise, she enjoyed it. To her, it seemed like an elaborate dance. She loved dancing, and to her, swordsmanship seemed like ballet. Danylo enjoyed teaching her. When they finally realized that Bartek and Olga were watching, they stopped. Danylo apologized. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were ready." They both said, "No, we were watching." "Oksana, you are quite fluid in your movements." She smiled and said, "I studied ballet when I was young," Bartek commented. "From dance to the sword. One wouldn't think that the two were so similar." Olga kissed him then said, "You should have. You learned to dance well, very quickly." Bartek smiled, saying, "I had a great teacher that I couldn't take my eyes off of." Olga smiled then asked, "Am I going to have to worry about your motives?" Bartek replied, "Not until we get a room. Then you know what they will be." Olga laughed, saying, "I have to wait that long?" Danylo said, "Would you two quit already?" They both said, "No." Danylo shook his head and started packing his and Oksana's horses. To her great surprise, Oksana started to enjoy the trip. Bartek and Olga's innuendo made the mood light. She found that the food cooked by campfire delicious. The 4 days it took for them to travel into Ukrass to the village of Ostrava went by fast for her. There they went to the inn to get rooms. When they entered, the innkeeper, a woman of about 30 with her hair in a braid, said hello. Then seeing the red leather both Bartek and Olga were wearing, said. A woman, Anilka? Bartek replied. Yes. There is one. She stuttered. But the only one is Vendetta. And that would make you Wojtek. She then noticed he was wearing two swords and the caps on her staff. Oh my goodness! Would that make you Danylo? She asked as she looked at him. Danylo nodded. Yes. She looked at Oksana. You are in the company of great warriors, legends. They and their comrades routed the Vragovs even though they were outnumbered 4-1. They saved Ukrass. Oksana looked up and replied. I am in the company of great people. It is my privilege to call friends. At that moment, a burly man of about 30 came in. He was Bartek's height but 25 pounds heavier. He walked up to Olga and said, I am sorry for what I said to you. Olga looked at him with questioning eyes. Then he looked at Bartek and said, Thank you, Angel, for not killing me. My shoulder will always be a reminder of what evil will bring me. I may have a bad arm now, but I have life and even love. The innkeeper said. They are the ones? He nodded. Yes, I said vile things to her. She broke my nose. Then I tried to rob a traveler and he put his lance in my shoulder. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't have been sentenced to labor. Then I wouldn't have sobered up and met you. She looked at them and said, Your rooms are free. Sit down, I'll get you some food and ales. The four smiled, and sat down. They talked while they ate and drank, then Bartek and Olga went to their room. That night when Bartek prayed he asked the earthly parents of the Most High to ask their son to keep that man from being tempted to do evil. Danylo and Oksana stayed up a couple of hours longer. Then Danylo walked Oksana to her room, bid her good night and went to his own room.